and welcome to the podcast of Loughborough University's Institute of Advanced Studies, a podcast where our international fellows discuss the most pressing issues of today that we're all facing and share their exciting research ideas. We hope you enjoy today's talk. Thank you for tuning in. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the International House. I'm Professor Educa, Director of the Institute of Advanced Studies. It's really wonderful to see some of you here in the room. Welcome to those of you joining us online today. Today is the continuation of our celebration of the UNESCO chairs that we have here at Loughborough. At Loughborough, we have three UNESCO chairs, Professor Chico Lam, Professor Mike Wilson, and Professor Richard Giulianotti. It's really wonderful. We have the largest number of UNESCO chairs across the whole of the UK. And so this is why this year we're hosting UK UNESCO conference. And as part of that, we, as at IIS, delighted to host international fellows who work so closely with our fellows. We had the first two seminars yesterday. So if you didn't see those, you can catch up online. And today we have two more fellows presenting, and the talks will be released online as well. A couple of housekeeping rules. So for those of you online, please post your questions in the Q&A section. We will monitor that. For those of you in the room, please ask questions and comments. We are only recording the presentation. We are not recording Q&A, so feel free to discuss anything you wish to discuss. And of course, then for those of you in the room, there will be an opportunity to talk over lunch, which we'll serve in an hour, right? And then come back to the second talk. That's it for me. Welcome, Maria. It's wonderful to have you here. And I'll pass over to Janine to introduce you.
Thank you. I am thrilled to be able to introduce Malu. Malu is joining us today from the University of Campinas in Brazil, where she leads and I'm going to get it right, the Center for Research and Innovation in Equity and Inclusion in Physical Education and Paralympic Sports. Very long title. It's impressive because it's beaten the length of our centre's title, which is the Centre for Para and Disability Sports Innovation. So I'm really, really pleased to be able to host Malu this week for our UNESCO event. We've known each other for a number of years now and worked together on a range of different projects relating to disability inclusion in PE, but I won't say any more. I will let Malu tell you all about her work.
Thank you, Janine. So, thank you all for being here today. And I'm very glad to be here. It's kind of a privilege to be here and share my research. I have been doing some research with Janine, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I want to thank Janine for inviting me, to considering me to be here. I want to thanks to Institute of the Advanced Students to inviting me. And I want to thank Kieran and Connor for making it happen, because I know it's a lot. Come to Brazil and a lot of stuff. Thanks, Kieran and Connor. So today I'm going to talk about some critical perspectives on disability and how they can reshape the way we understand physical education here. Oh, it works?
Just right on the, yeah.
Oh, okay. So, to do so, I would like to present my journey as a researcher in the field of physical education for disabled students. In the first steps of this journey, my main questions on physical education for disabled students was, what should we as PE teachers do to include disabled students in physical education? At that time, I was thinking about teaching strategies, adapting resources, and modifying activities to involve disabled students in PE. In general, I was not thinking about changing physical education itself, but rather about making minimal adaptations so that disabled students could participate. However, after years of listening to and working with disabled students in PE, my perspective has changed. My understanding of disability has changed, and now my understanding of physical education, and more importantly, of inclusion, is also changed. At this point, my main question is, how should physical education be in order to become a meaningful educational space for disabled students? Now I'm questioning PE itself. I believe we must rethink what we call physical education if we want to find answers that promotes social justice for disabled students. To present this journey, I would like to explore four main questions here today. What does it mean to be a disabled student in physical education? What is the physical education for disabled students? Third one, what is the meaning of inclusion in physical education? And my last question is how can we move forward toward a more equitable physical education for disabled students? Sorry, people in Brazil, they don't know. Time. Yes, it's quite difficult. I hope that by the end of this presentation, I will have shown how research has changed our understanding of disabled students in physical education, at least in Brazil, where I have been working. So basically, we are going to talk about our physical education here. So I need to put physical education into some perspective. Brazil is, I believe it's Brazilian people are waking up now. So it's okay. So physical education is often the first place where children systematically learn about movement, physical activity, and sport. The main goal of physical education is to teach students in general about the possibilities of their bodies and how they can remain engaged in physical activity and sport throughout their lives. To do this, physical education has defined its official knowledge through what we call physical culture. And physical culture represents the ways in which we as a society express ourselves through our bodies. However, choosing physical culture as the official knowledge of physical education is not a neutral decision because physical culture has been narrowly defined in schools through noticeable ways of bodily expression, as we can see in the dominance of traditional sports in physical education curriculum. In this sense, when we restrict what students are expected to learn to specific ways of expressing themselves through movement, we as PE teachers are implicitly defining who can succeed and who cannot succeed. This happens because the official knowledge of physical education has not historically represented the diversity of bodies that exist in society, including disabled bodies. Another important aspect of physical education is the role of the body itself in the learning process. We learn in physical education about the possibilities of our bodies through movement. In this sense, the body is both the object of learning and the instrument through which learning happens. Therefore, we must reflect on what kind of bodies we are allowing to exist to participate and be valued in physical education. So going to my first question, what does it mean to be a disabled student in physical education? This is the first question I started researching in physical education for disabled students. It's like 20 years ago. I'm that old. So my first step toward understanding physical education for disabled students was listen to disabled students themselves. My main goal was to understand their perspectives on physical education classes. At that time, I believed inclusion would be possible if we understood what disabled needed in order to participate in PE. Research showed me that PE was often a very difficult place for disabled students. In general, disabled students felt invisible, excluded, and bullied by their peers. In my research, I heard students describing spending PE classes sitting in a corner, waiting to the PE's end. I heard the students talking about being hurt during team sports practice because their disabilities were not taken into consideration. I heard disabled students sharing feelings of not belonging because PE teachers and classmates told them they could not play sports because sports are not for them. I heard disabled students say that sports was not for them because they had a disability. If you think about it, we are talking, especially in Brazil, I don't know how it works here as physical education in England schools, but in Brazil we have two PE class per week, 50 minutes each, and during like 12 years of schooling process. So we are talking about so much time hearing the sports is not for you. So it has been quite effective lesson. As a result, experience of exclusion are very common. For many students, PE was a place for not belonging and certainly not a place for learning about movement and possibilities of bodily expression. At the same time, disabled students often question the meaning of traditional sports for their lives. This is a very important question because it reveals how meaningless PE can become for disabled students. Traditional sports practice were frequently associated with feelings of being unable, incapable, or inadequate within physical education. Essentially, research with disabled students was showing that being a disabled student in physical education meant being the other, the outsider. Within a PE curriculum centered on traditional sports, disabled students were positioned as incapable, a second type of students, like the inferior students. So when we listen to PE teachers talking about disabled students, we can see how ableism is still naturalized in physical education. For these teachers, there is what they call a normal PE classes, and inclusion is associated with minimal change at PE classes in order to involve disabled students. When PE teachers refer to normal classes, they are basically saying that PE is designed for non-disabled students and that disabled students should adapt to PE rather than PE adapting to them. In the normal PE classes, no disabled students are the ones most likely to succeed. On the other hand, the idea of the normal class also positions disabled students as incapable of fully participating in PE and meeting its learning expectations. As a result, disabled students are constructed as outsiders in PE who are expected to fail to meet these expectations because of their environments, rather than because of ableist values on which the normal PE class is founded. For many PE teachers, disability is still understood through the medical model, meaning that is viewed as an individual limitation and personal problem. Disability is still not seen as an important part of students' identities. Therefore, understanding what it means to be a disabled student in PE asks for us to consider how non-disabled people, including PE teachers, define disability. At the same time, PE teachers play an important role because they are in position of power to decide what should be learned and how it should be learned, and consequently, who is more likely to succeed in physical education. Thinking on my second questions, thinking about what is PE for disabled students, we must understand how ableism has become deeply naturalized in your society. Ableism is not simply prejudice against disabled people. It's an oppressive system that permeates society at all levels, including institutions, practice, and social structures. Through the devaluation of disability and disabled people, ableism defines ability as a synonymous with normality and consequently as a marker of success. However, the concept of ability and its boundaries have been narrowly constructed around the physical expressions of the non-disabled body. In this way, through ableist beliefs and practice, disabled people have historically been positioned as inferior type of human being. So when we think about physical education, it's important to consider two main aspects. The first one is the curriculum of physical education. PE curriculum have traditionally been structured around sports, presenting them as representative of the physical culture of all students. However, curriculum is always a matter of choice, and these choices are never neutral. Grounded in traditional sports, PE has restricted the representation of the physical culture to a limited, hegemonic, and masculinized perspective of sports and the body. Through these curricular choices, students who are unable to perform according to the expectations of traditional sports are often positioned as incapable. In this context, the bodily expressions and experience of disabled students have been frequently been ignored or silenced. The second aspect concerns the concept of ability itself, which has been the second aspect concerns the concept of ability itself, which has been largely shaped by the practice and values of traditional sports. Just like the curriculum, ability is not a neutral concept. Through the ableist construction of the non-disabled body as the norm, ability in PE has been reduced to the performance of traditional sports skills. As a result, the students who cannot perform these skills, including many disabled students, are marginalized, while those considered able-bodied are valued, recognized, and legitimized. The problem is not sports itself in PE, but rather which sports are privileged and whose forms of participation are recognized as legitimate. Consequently, we must ask what kind of abilities are acknowledged and valued in physical education. Through ableism, physical education has established very narrow boundaries around what counts as official knowledge, who is recognized as capable, and who has opportunity to succeed both in physical education and sports beyond schools. So, going to my last question, and I ask sorry here for my drawings, the best I can offer in this I can do in this skill. So after considering this scenario and reflecting on my third research questions, recognizing the presence of ableism in physical education has led me to question what inclusion in physical education actually means. So I stopped thinking in how to include disabled people in PE and to think about what is inclusion. Through the research literature, we have noticed that inclusion in physical education remains a controversial concept. It's not because people are necessarily against inclusion, but because inclusive practices in PE have often remained distant from genuine experience of belonging, participation, and recognition. After researching ableism in physical education, my understanding of inclusion has increasingly been informed by post-colonial perspective, particularly from Black feminist authors such as Grada Quilomba, Djamila Ribeiro, and Kimberly Crenshaw. This perspective has led me to question the very notion of inclusion. The word inclusion itself suggests that someone is being inserted into the space to which they do not originally belong. From this perspective, and considering the narratives, policies, and practices surrounding inclusion, we as non-disabled society have assumed the role of those who are in charge to include disabled people. Post-colonial thinkers encourage us to question whether the proposal of inclusion is, in some cases, based on denying or silencing disabled identities in order to make disabled people fit within what is considered the normal or standard society. These are very uncomfortable questions, and they remain largely unanswered yet. In PE, I have often questioned whether the inclusion of disabled students resembles in these pictures. We have the PE classes, what many teachers call the normal classes, and inclusion becomes the effort to make disabled students fit into this normative environment. In this scenario, the disabled students occupy the position of the outsider. To be included, the students is expected to perform forms of physical culture that were chosen by and for non-disabled people. I like to think of the concept of ability as this thin line, as the boundary of the figure. So Students who are able to perform the abilities valued by PE are included, and those who cannot are positioned outside of what is recognized as successful participation. Based on this discussion, we have talked much about traditional sports. But what about the Paralympic sports? Should Paralympic sports be part of the PE curriculum? We still need to better understand the role of disability sports in Paralympic sports in PE. Are these sports representative of the physical, cultural, and experience of disabled students? In general, Paralympic and disability sports continue to play only a minor role in physical education. They are often taught as a way of developing non-disabled students' empathy toward disabled people. And even more problematic situations, they are used to reinforce disability as a limitation rather than as a legitimate and valuable form of human diversity. Therefore, we are still left with many questions. As our understanding of ableism develops, our perspective on inclusion and physical education continue to change. Perhaps the challenge is no longer simply to how to include the disabled students in PE, but how to rethink PE itself from the experience, knowledge, and physical culture of disabled people. And why all this matter, why we are concerned, or why should think about disabled people in PE? Because as society, we make decisions about education and public research based on what we know about people and their needs. The problem is that disabled students have rarely been part of the process through which PE is defined. For a long time, PE has been built on non-disabled understanding of disability, and this is a post-colonial perspective, and on ableist assumptions about what disabled students need or deserve. As a result, disabled students continue to be marginalized in physical education, while their reality, experience, and perspectives remain largely unheard. And that matters because education should be for all. So, trying to answer my final questions, I would like to present my most research project, the long name Denise brought, or better say, my current research endeavor. I believe it's a more endeavor than just a project. So we in Brazil, we have recently established a research center focused on equity, inclusive physical education, and Paralympic sports. We call it, I need to read the name of the center, it's too long. Research and Innovation Center on Equity, Inclusive Physical Education, and Paralympic Sports. The research center was launched this year at my university, and I have to say that Professor Janine is part of the center, and Professor Hegel over there is part of our team too. So when I talk about this center in Brazil, the question I answer most often is, but what is the center? What is the thing, a center of the research? The center is not only a researcher focus, but we are a center of developing sports action with our community, at our case, disabled students. We also must develop training programs for PE teachers, educational policies for social justice and PE, and also, finally, research. So we are not talking about only research. Basically, we have two main goals at our center. First, understand the reality of disabled students in PE, considering disability as identity category shaped by class, gender, and territory. The second goal is rethink and rebuild physical education with disabled people. This is a very important point. Challenging the dominance of traditional sports and affirming the place of Paralympic sports in PE. So it's very easy, you know. To make these goals possible, our project has been designed as a 5-year initiative organizing into 3 progressive phases. Also, we are aligned to 2 sustainable development goals of United Nations, number 4, quality education, and number 10, reduced inequalities. We started these years and hopefully complete the project in 2030. I should be alive till then. So, phase one, the first year of our project, we are going to work with disabled students from across Brazil, not only my state, São Paulo state, but for all Brazil, to better understand what it means to be a disabled student. We want to understand disability as both an individual and collective identity. And at the same time, we want to understand how disabled students express themselves in PE. As a part of the project in the first year, we are currently offering a free courses for in-service PE teachers on understanding disability from a critical perspective and how to teach Paralympic and disability sports in PE as a curriculum component. This course is an important part for the second phase of the project. As a result of the phase one, we expect to challenge the universal disabled identity that has been constructed and affirmed by non-disabled people. In our second phase, starting in 2027, PE teachers will teach Paralympic sports as a curricular component of physical education. To do this, we will work side by side with PE teachers in planning and implementing Paralympic sports lessons, not only for disabled students, but for our students. This is an important point too. At the same time, we will work closely with disabled students to understand meaningful ways of teaching Paralympic sports in physical education. We hope that teaching Paralympic sports in a planned and meaningful way can change the marginalized position of disabled students in PE. At the same time, we hope it can be broaden their perspectives on the possibilities available to them in sports. It's very important in this phase that Paralympic sports is understood by both PE teachers and students in general as an educational right for disabled students, so should be inserted in the curriculum. At the end of 2027 and 2028, we also must develop a Paralympic Games with disabled students at schools. So they should have like an event we must develop an event for these kids. So phase three, or final phase, the third phase, we expect to continue working side by side with PE teachers to offer Paralympic sports in school, but now as an extracurricular activity. We continue offering the curriculum, but now we add extracurricular activity. And why should Paralympic sports be offered as an extracurricular activity for disabled students? We believe that Paralympic sports should be a right for disabled students, just as traditional sports has been for non-disabled students. In this phase, we expect that Paralympic sport as an extracurricular activity it will promote the collective engagement of disabled student sports. Hopefully, we will also see change in the dominant culture of traditional sports in PE and consequently in the sports cultures of schools. This project is designed to be developed inside the schools and inside PE classes through the collaboration of PE teachers and disabled students. However, as you can see, there is still a lot of work to do, and there is a lot of work for PE teachers too. To make this project feasible, our funding agency provides scholarships for PE teachers so they can get involved in the project to be develop their activities. We also have scholarships for principals and coordinators inside the school to guarantee the project is going to be work at schools. So we have some challenges to make this project happen. We have a lot of challenges. I brought the only two most important for me. I believe the most important have been built post-colonial research design to the different phases. How we conduct research in the post-colonial way. So we must find a post-colonial research design to make this happen. Listen disabled students are not enough anymore. Listen to them, in my perspective, looks quite a colonialist perspective, as we are allowing them to get involved at research we conduct. This is a quite important point because we still have minimal engagement of disabled people in research in PE, and disabled people should be in charge of it. Oh, I have a second. So I have the second challenge we have is how can we disseminate knowledge? This is my funding agency is pushing us to disseminate, and you are not talking about sharing information. We should sharing knowledge. For example, we should explain what our papers are saying to people, because people in general, our community, they don't read papers, they don't have access to papers, especially in Brazil. So we should, in Brazil, it's very popular Instagram. So we built an Instagram. I don't know the name of this, but it's an Instagram thing. So we can share our knowledge. So we have a paper. I should make a video explaining to people what is the meaning, what we have found in the paper. So it's a big challenge because we are researchers, we are not Instagrammers, it's very difficult. It's a nightmare, but it's a learning. So as a final thought, I would like to emphasize that Paralympic sports is neither a unique nor a definitive answer to the exclusion of disabled students in physical education. However, it can be part of the answer. It's just a research project, We can't answer everything. In this project, we understand Paralympic sports as part of the physical culture of disabled students and as educational rights in PE. Through Paralympic sports, we aim to question and challenge the construction of the universal disabled identity, which continues to position disabled students as inferior in PE. So that is all I have to show you. I hope I have shown how my research has shaped my perspective on physical education and disability. I would like to thank again Professor Janine and EI as to having me. And obrigada. Thank you in Portuguese.
Thank you for listening to the podcast of Loughborough University's Institute of Advanced Studies. A quick reminder about how to stay connected. You can find us on Blue Sky, LinkedIn and Instagram, and you can also watch the presentations on YouTube. The podcast is available on all the major platforms. Please download, share, and most importantly, subscribe. See you next time.